the recording. Thanks, Robert. I'm just going to take this opportunity to welcome Councillor Sangster to the committee and thank Councillor Linda Mabin for her contribution to the committee and her time on it. So I'm going to hand over to Aileen to call for the said and intimate any apologies.
Good morning, members. If you could just confirm your attendance when I call your name. Councillor Barton.
Yeah, thanks.
Councillor McGee.
Yeah.
Councillor Friel.
Here, Aileen, thank you.
Councillor Cowan.
Here.
Councillor Sangster.
Here, thank you.
Councillor Mabin.
Present. Good morning.
Councillor Maitland.
Here.
Councillor Lennox.
Morning. Here.
Councillor Crawford. Councillor Watts.
Good morning, I'm here.
We've got apologies from Councillor Filson. Councillor Hogg.
She's having trouble getting online.
Oh,
It's just message. I think IT are on it for her. Thank you.
Thanks. And Councillor Kyle.
Here.
Thanks, Aileen. Members are going to move on to item 1 on the agenda, and that's declarations of interest. For me, just for transparency, item 4 on the agenda, I'm a member of the Hurlfront Crickleholm Angling Club. The members of the club do use the right of way at Shawhill to access the river at times, so having applied the test, I don't think it's significant enough for me to withdraw from that, but it's just for transparency. Craig, thanks. Don't see anybody else in the room or online. So I'm going to go into item 2 on the agenda, and that is the hearing procedure. Aileen, could you take us through that, please?
So we've got 2 hearings this morning, and the process will be that the planning officer will give details of the application and objectors will be given the opportunity to present their objections to the committee. Each objector will be given 5 minutes, and in cases where there are several objectors, in excess of 6, they will be given a collective 30 minutes to give their objections. Members of the committee will then get the opportunity to ask questions of the objectors. After that, the applicant and or their agents will speak for a maximum of 15 minutes, and members of the committee will again be given the opportunity to ask questions. At that point, the hearing will close and the committee will move to determination.
Thanks, Aileen. Members are going to move on to item 3 on the agenda, and that is planning application number 25/0033/CA and 25/0034/PP, and that's demolition of existing unused building and change of use of land to form parking facilities and loading bay at 35 Main Street, Comores, Kilmarnock, KA3 2SY by Premier Comores Limited. And members, we do have a hearing for this application this morning, and I'm going to propose 5 minutes for each objector and 15 minutes for the agent. Are we okay with that? Good. Thank you very much. So moving on to the first part of the hearing procedure, I'm going to hand over to Fiona Finlay, who's going to take us through the presentation.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everybody. This is a conjoined report for the determination of an application for conservation area consent, seeking the demolition of a building within the Comores Conservation Area, and an application for planning permission for the formation of a car park. Both applications relate to the building and land located at 35 Main Street, Comores. This is on the corner of Main Street and Mill Hill Avenue. The existing building is a single-storey non-residential building, most recently used for community purposes. The building is single-storey with a cream-coloured rendered finish and slate roof. To the front of the building is a tarmacked area that has set out accessible car parking spaces for the users of the building. These parking spaces are in effect on the public footpath as noted within the planning history within your report. Bollards around the edge of the footpath aim to restrict cars parking on the pavement in this area. Full details of the site location and proposals are outlined in your report starting at paragraph 4. If I can now just turn to the slides, members, I'll just guide you through them and some photographs of the location. Here we have the application site on Main Street, Comores. It's in sort of dark red area. You'll see the boundary of the red dashed area on the plan. That is actually just to show you the boundary of the conservation area within Comores, and you'll see that the application site is centrally located. And this is the excuse me, this is the location plan for from the applicant, with the red area outline as the application site and the area in blue is the other land owned by the applicant. In a little bit more detail, you can see the blue line outlined in the applicant for the existing building of the shop with the car park, and you can see the red area, red outline, which is the application site. This is the proposal, which is to demolish the building, create the 5 car parking spaces, landscaping just at the very back of it, and you'll see the entrance onto Main Street. These are the details submitted by the applicant, which just show you some photographs, which I'll just obviously show you some photographs taken by the case officer in a minute or two, but that just shows you the building itself and the setup. This is just the local development plan 2 map, which I put up, just shows that the site centrally located within Comores. Some photographs taken by the case officer, which show the ongoing works to the shop unit, which is being extended at the moment. This is the louping stain that's detailed in the report. Again, just a front image of the building itself. Area to the rear. And that would be us. Turning back to the report, we have no objection from consultees as detailed at paragraph 12 in your report. In terms of representations from the public, we have received 66 objections and 6 supportive comments to the planning application and 20 objections and 1 supportive comment to the conservation area consent. All points are summarised in your report, starting at paragraph 14. The development plan for East Ayrshire now comprises the adopted East Ayrshire Local Development Plan 2 from 2024 and NPF 4 with associated supplementary guidance. The report before you at paragraph 22 refers to the planning considerations for both applications, and these are the principle of the proposed demolition, amenity impacts on the car parking conservation consent in town centre, transport impacts and residential amenity impacts with any other matters. To achieve conservation area consent for the demolition of a building, certain statutory tests are required to be met. As explained within the report, the building is considered to play a positive part in the character and appearance of Comores conservation area. As such, retention of the building should be sought. In some limited circumstances, demolition of such a building can still be justified, for example, where its structural condition rules out retention at reasonable cost, or no alternative reuse of the building following a marketing exercise can be found. None of these circumstances have been demonstrated by the application. The proposal to demolish would therefore not preserve or enhance the character and appearance of Comores conservation area, and noting the special regard is to be had to such matters, it's considered that the refusal of conservation consent would be in line with that statutory duty. This position is supported by the policies of the Development Plan and Historic Environment Scotland guidance. Turning now to the proposed development for a car park, as also explained within the report, the proposal is not in itself considered to preserve or enhance the character of the conservation area. It is considered to be detrimental to the town centre streetscape by introducing an area of flat, largely tarmac surface, which is not particularly distinct or pleasant in appearance. The proposed car park is therefore considered to be contrary to the relevant policies of the development plan in respect of the impact on the town centre and conservation areas. Whilst we do have letters of support for both applications, it's not considered that the matters raised would outweigh the statutory provisions in terms of the conservation area or the development plan. Noting also that other material considerations in the form of a number of objections would also indicate that the application should be refused. In this instance, both the conservation area consent and application for planning permission cannot be supported and are recommended for refusal as per the reasons within your report. Chair.
Thank you, Fiona. Members, we move on to part 2 of the hearing procedure, and that's where we hear from the objectors and or their agents, who will present the objections to the committee in support of their written objections. So I'm going to call up Mrs. Coulter, if you'd just like to come up to the lectern, please. Mrs. Coulter, but you get 5 minutes, but what I try and gently do is give you 4 minutes, just give you a kind of gentle reminder that if you want to then take that remaining minute to get the most important points across. Thanks.
Good morning, everyone. I'd first like to speak about planning application 25/0033/CA. The local development plan 2, listed buildings and conservation areas draft supplementary guidance 2024, has a policy within HE2, and it mentions demolition in a conservation area. It says there will be a presumption in favour of the retention of buildings that positively contribute to the character and appearance of the conservation area, and any proposal for demolition should demonstrate that positive attempts have been made to achieve retention, restoration and sympathetic conservation to a compatible use. Any demolition will only be supported where there is a planning application for a replacement building that preserves or enhances the character and appearance of the conservation area, or in exceptional circumstances a landscaping scheme is proposed as a replacement. I don't know if any of these 3 things have been done regarding this planning application. I've certainly not seen it on the portal or had any neighbour notifications. So that was my main objection. It may well have been done and I've not seen it, but I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention because I've not seen that. Then in this policy, point 2.3 regarding demolition, it says in line with HE2, applicants who wish to demolish a listed building or an unlisted building, which the cabin is, in the conservation area, will be expected to provide detailed evidence to show that 1, the building is no longer of special interest. 2, the building is incapable of repair. 3, the demolition of the building is essential to delivering significant benefits to the economic growth or the wider community, or repair of the building is not economically viable and that it has been marketed at a price that reflects its location and condition to potential purchasers for a reasonable period. I don't know that any of this has been done either. Again, it might have been and I'm just not aware of it, so I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. There's also the 2 objections from 2 historic organisations, the Architectural Heritage Society of Scotland. They have objected to this as it is part of the townscape value and makes a positive contribution to the character and appearance of the townscape. When the proposal is to replace with tarmac, they do not consider the case for demolition has been made. And the other organisation is the Scottish Civic Trust. It totally disregards, sorry, this is their quote, it totally disregards the conditions set out in the HES guidance, and the documents show it has stirred up much local concern for the potential loss of a building erected by and on behalf of the community. The proposed use of the site for a few parking spaces should in any case rule it out as a negative contribution to the ambience of the conservation area. The Trust objects to the application, hoping that refusal will act as an incentive to bring the little building back into life as a well-used community asset. So I thought those were very important to bring to everyone's attention because these are sort of historical organisations. And then on to planning application 25/0034/PP. The cabin is of local historical importance and sits within the conservation area of Comores, and it's right in the middle of the conservation area. The cabin was built by volunteer labour by public conscription.
Just to be, that's your 1 minute kind of reminder.
Oh, okay. So it was built by the villagers on land donated to the villagers by the Murphy family, and it's a very important part of the village history and identity. There's also the louping stone, which is also called a plague stone, and that's very important as well. And it's cracked, I think, and they're worried about moving it in case it gets damaged more. And the cabin may be unused currently, but that was through the choice of the current owner who had the utilities cut off a couple of years ago, and it was in use up until when it was sold, and it could still be in use just now. And also that side of Main Street, if this goes ahead, there's no access for pedestrians from Mill Hill Avenue to Fenwick Road because there will just be cars coming in and off the pavement all day. So I don't know how that improves the public realm and helps people walk around the village if they want to go to the shop. Planning was granted for 5 parking spaces in a lay-by design on the pavement. So parking has already been provided. So I don't know that there's a need to demolish a building in order to put the spaces in, because that's already been approved. And the cabin forms an important part of the street frontage. You know, taking that away and replacing it with tarmac could potentially damage the townscape of the village. And that's me done.
Thank you very much. And for something, can you just, for something that was nervous, done really well. Somewhat, but at this stage, what we do is we open it up to members for questions. Yeah. So, members, do you have any questions for Ms. Coulter? Councillor Cowan?
Thank you, Chair. It's just really a quick question about the existing car parking there. So is that sufficient, what is there at the moment?
There is no car parking at the moment, because the shop extension was built on the original car park. But the plans initially showed a lay-by to be put in on the pavement in front of the shop, which was a loading bay and access for parking for 5 cars. I think Scottish ministers originally approved the change of use application in 2011, that there must be 5 car parking spaces for the duration of the development. So I don't know if that still stands or if that's been overridden.
So it was really about the on-street parking that I was actually asking about.
All right, yeah. So there was provision for a lay-by on Main Street with 5 car parking spaces outside the shop.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Councillor McGee?
Aye, thanks. Just a couple of points. Again, it was a well-used building for many, many years, but it wasn't getting used so much in the latter stages. I think that's why it was sold, because the folk couldn't get anybody to volunteer to look after it. So have you got any concerns that if we're left with the building, it doesn't become a derelict building? Just like the old cafe in the conservation area that's been derelict for 40 years. The other point is, you mentioned, Ken, there would be cars. If the application was granted, there would be cars coming across the footpath. But that happens at the moment, notwithstanding the current extension of the shop, because there's parking spaces directly in front of the building. So there is cars moving across that pavement as it is. Is that not correct?
There is, but that doesn't make it right. The fact that it's happening at the moment doesn't mean that it needs to continue, because it is unsafe at the moment as well. But something could be done about that. It's not about accepting that that's the way that it is, so let's just keep it like that. I think we could change it and make it safer.
And the concerns about ending up with a derelict building?
We could do a community buyback and run it. I mentioned that at the Community Council, that funds could be raised to buy it back and turn it back into a community asset.
Any other questions for Mrs. Coulter? No, thanks very much. If you just go back to the kind of public gallery. I'm going to ask up, is it Mr. Costin? Thanks, Mr. Costin. It's just the same 5 minutes and a gentle reminder, a minute to go. Thanks.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to me today. I know that you've been aware that there's been a significant response to the application to demolish the old man's cabin in Comoz and to replace it with a car park and a loading bay. Laura's addressed the issue of the proposed demolition of a building that's been a central part of the village landscape, has a history of being a valuable community asset, and has been part of the conservation area since its inception. I'd like to use my time to address the issue of road safety in relation to the application. Whilst considering this application, it would be prudent to note that these plans followed on from a planning application 210080, which allowed for the construction of a single-storey extension to the shop to be built on an existing car parking area. These plans were initially opposed by Ayrshire Roads Alliance. Ayrshire Roads Alliance then withdrew their objection, subject to a set of conditions. Condition 4 being the parking lay-by should be widened to at least 2.5 metres. The two accessible spaces outside the existing cabin building should be removed, and the positioning of good quality bollards or other street furniture will be required to ensure that there is no vehicle entry onto the paved pedestrian area, further stipulating that these details shall also be approved in writing by the planning authority in consultation with Ayrshire Roads Alliance before any work commences on the site. The reason for these stipulations was, and the direct quote is, in the interests of the amenity of the area and road safety. This amended plan was approved, losing the existing parking spaces without the need to replace them. To summarise, Ayrshire Roads Alliance stipulated as a condition to removing their initial objection that the entire area from the storefront to Mill Hill should be traffic-free and that bollards should be installed to ensure this. The current application for the creation of a car park and loading bay would seem to be contrary to the conditions applicable to the acceptance of the original plans. With vehicular access reintroduced, crossing the proposed pedestrianised area. Indeed, as planned, the car park and loading bay would require delivery vehicles to stop on the main road and reverse into the proposed area against the flow of traffic in an already congested area on the main road. Perhaps even more dangerously, vehicles would have to reverse back onto the main road. It should be noted that Ayrshire Roads Alliance initially objected to the plan as it flew in the face of their plans for the centre of Comores. This objection, however, was removed from the list of documents in the public-facing part of the planning portal and was replaced on the 15th of this month, long after the consultation period was over, with what I would describe as a non-specific cut and paste of traffic regulations. Indeed, the only reference to the site on the application is the reference number on the document. I would have liked to have been able, in preparing this, to quote from both documents, but neither were available on the portal at the time of writing, with the latter showing as document unavailable on the 22nd of April. It's now available again. I understand that copies of both of these documents should still exist within the application file, including the original refusal or the original objection from Ayrshire Roads Alliance. In summary, should the current plans to introduce off-road parking place and loading bay be approved, it will, in my opinion...
That's just a gentle one minute reminder. Thanks.
It will, in my opinion, be to the serious detriment of road and pedestrian safety. Secondly, it would make a mockery of the conditions that were applied when the original plan to extend the store were approved. And thirdly, it would permanently alter the character of the surrounding area. Though I found the process surrounding the application to be, again, in my opinion, flawed, I would, without hesitation, support the recommendation of the Chief Planning Officer that this application should be refused. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Costin. So I'm going to open it up to members for any questions at this point. No, I don't see any. So we just like to return to the guy. Thank you very much. Members, we're going to move on to part 4 of the hearing procedure. We're going to hear from the applicant or their agent. We'll speak for a maximum of 15 minutes in support of their application. So I'm going to... Mr. Smythe. Oh, so it's Mr. Singh, sorry.
Morning, Council. I've not prepared anything for 15 minutes. I can't go on for 15 minutes. Wee bit of history about myself. I purchased the building, which is my store there now, about 2011. It was just a derelict building, lying, no use to anybody. So I bought it, made it into a store, got about 11, 12 people working. As the business got busier, we needed to extend for the fact of the demands of the public, what they were asking for that we had, especially for the elderly. So now I've extended into the car park, which is a heavy investment, and it's looking nice. It's all in line with the way that the council had asked for and the way we use the materials. We've done all that. So hopefully we'll get up to about 20 members of staff now working in that store. The only issue we've been having right now is parking, and we have seen a drop in turnover for myself anyway, but that's not here or there. The parking that was initially put in, I think it was like a lay-by, it's not enough, to be honest. We've got a restaurant opened up in front of us, and he seems to be busy. We've got a bakery. We've got the cafe as well, and we're all needing some form of parking and off-road parking. Right now, if I had a lay-by, it's only meant to be, I think it was 3 spaces, so which I don't think is going to be enough. Since I've been in the village, we've seen more houses getting made on the outskirts of the Irvine Road. There is a demand for parking, especially off-street parking. I think the two folk, they were saying that it's not going to be safe, but I'm sure when we design it, or it has been designed, or going back to the architects, we would be putting in some sort of bollards or some sort of path for folk to actually make their way from one side of the street, excuse me, down to the left-hand side of the street. Now, the building in question that we're talking about, I bought that in I think COVID time, and the issue with it there was it was with the senior citizens of the village, and there was only a few folk on that committee at that time, and the lady I used to speak to, she was saying it was run as a charity organisation. So she said folk would just come in, spend all day, and just give her £1 or £2 here and there, and she was struggling, we're going to struggle with getting any bills paid for the likes of the heating and the gas for the Christmas. She didn't know where she was getting the money from. So I did propose, I said, look, okay, I'll take it off you. I'll probably use it as a storeroom. At that time, I didn't have anything in mind of extending, or the application was in. I think I got refused, and we were looking for using it for storage purposes, or if I could rent it out. Now, when it comes into renting it out or trying to sell it on, I have tried. We've had a few people for hot food came in, had a look at it, and they've argued with the space is too small. So I tried to get the land at the back to build some sort of storeroom so they can hold their dry goods in there. And apparently that land's been taken away. So we also had a few folk coming in from, I think there was a therapist, came in, a physiotherapist, and they wanted, it just didn't work out what they were looking for. They wanted more rooms, and 2-3 rooms put in. It wasn't big enough for them. So I have tried trying to do things with it. Over the years, it has fallen right into a disrepair internally. The floor has gone now internally inside. I can ask anybody from the Kilmore's Council to come and have a look at it. The floor's away, it's caved in. I did have one of the builders look at it, and he's saying you're talking maybe between £10,000 to £15,000 to repair the floor. The building, it's constructed about 80 years ago. It's not listed. I think if you can check that, but my architect says it's not listed. The proposed car park to replace the adjacent gravel, is that where my shop has gone on to? We are struggling for space. Everybody's coming in now. They're just parking anywhere they want in front of the old man's cabin, as it was called. If we were to get the application, we would do it properly. I think in my defence, I've always tried to do everything properly within the store and the actual features that have been put on the outside of the shop, and always try to keep it intact so it blends into the village, even the way it is getting made right now. The business, as I said, local employment, it was lying empty when I bought the shop. I bought the premises. I think it was a pub. I've tried my best with it, but now, as I said, I am struggling for space. What was proposed was, I think, was a lay-by with 3 spaces. It's not going to be enough. That'd have been okay if there wasn't such where the houses are getting made and the restaurant open now. Now there's a restaurant there in the village as well. There's a bakery. They used to use that car park where my shop is on right now. The bakery used to use it. The cafe used to use it. I never ever go up to them and said, no, it's my car park. You can't use it. It was bringing business into the village. It was giving them some business and folk would jump into my shop. Right now, anybody can go down and see it's pretty bad for parking. And I don't think a lay-by is just going to be enough for, especially like I'm saying, the restaurant or if I get a delivery in, they're not going to be able to park anyway. And I'm only getting a delivery in. The way we've extended the store, right now we get about, I think about 4 deliveries a week. We would be going down to 2 deliveries a week because we are going to have a decent amount of storage within the store. So that would cut down trucks for my business anyway, coming into the village. With regards to the stone, I'm sure we would look at it properly, and if it was to go ahead, we would move it. I think the application has been put in to where it would get moved into. So we would do it properly and move it into the right area and have, landscape it properly as well, the area. Right now, the building's just lying there. I can't use it. Don't think anybody from the council, community council, unless they've got 10, 20,000 pounds to do the floor up, wouldn't be able to use it. And in time, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse and worse. I got the power and that cut due to the fact that the bills that were coming in from the utility companies. So I was like, I'm not paying £3,000-4,000 £4,000 a year between gas and electricity and the water bill. So that's why I got it cut. I think that's about all I need to say. I don't know if that's all I need to say, but that's about all I can come up with.
Thanks very much, Mr. Singh. So at this point, I'm going to open up to members. Can I ask the first question? So you bought the property around about COVID, was that
Yes.
about 2019?
I think it was something, yeah.
So what condition was the building in then? You're saying that it's obviously deteriorated
Yeah.
since then?
The ladies were saying they had just put the roof on, but the ladies were saying that the floor was going, and it has gone now. The floor, the trusts underneath the floor, there was water getting in from somewhere. You can see it on the outside, on the back left-hand corner of the building. It has came away. So whether there's movement within the building, I did get the builder to have a look at it, and I showed him. I said, "Look, what's happening here?" He goes, "It looks to be movement." And I said, "How do we go about trying to save it if we do?" He said, "You would need to take it back to, if it's brick, and strap it with metal." And he goes, then that's how you'd fix it. And he goes, "There's movement at the front of the building and there's movement at the back of the building."
So you'd say in the time that you've owned it, it's deteriorated further.
Yeah.
So when you bought
Yeah,
it,
well, when I bought it, the floor was going. I can't remember the lady's name, the secretary at the time. She told me, she goes, "There is an issue with the floor." And in time now it has. Anybody can come and have a look at it.
thanks, Mr. Singh. So members, over to yourself. Don't see any questions. Well, thanks very much, Mr.
All right,
Singh.
okay, thank you.
Okay, members, at this point, I'm going to close the hearing procedure. I'm going to hand back over to Fiona, who's going to respond to any items brought up during the hearing procedure.
Thanks, Chair. I don't have a great deal to respond to. A lot of the points covered by Mrs. Coulter are already in the presentation, in the committee report. What I would say to you is that there has been no information provided to us by the applicant's agent in terms of supporting the application under the conservation area requirements. As alluded to in the report, we do have a supporting statement, but it doesn't cover conservation aspects such as the interim guidance from HES in terms of your conservation report on the building, your structural details of the building. It doesn't cover anything like that, which is why you have a recommendation before you today. Let me just really can see the louping stone you saw in the photographs there, members. It is actually covered now because we asked for it to be covered during the construction works that are there. In terms of anything else, I don't have a great deal to cover. Mr. Corson covered road safety matters. I know Barry's here today. He may wish to come in that respect. We do have no objection from ARA. We did ask for clarity from ARA as to the reason for their previous comments, and Barry can maybe cover that. Other than that, to be honest, with regards to Mr. Singh's statement, as again, we don't have a conservation statement from the applicant's agent justifying from conservation terms why this building should be demolished. The policy is quite clear, and I've read that out to you in my earlier statements. I really don't have an awful lot else to add at the moment. Happy to come back in.
Thanks for that. Barry, I'll hand over to yourself.
Thanks, Chair. Yep, we recognise the comments that the objectors have raised just in relation to previous our responses in relation to concerns over pedestrian movements around the proposed junction. I think our colleagues quite rightly asked us to review our original proposal to put forward an objection based on road safety matters. When we've reviewed it, we think we can mitigate those concerns just by asking the applicant to review his junction arrangements and put measures in place which prioritise pedestrian movements across the junction. And I think through that we can mitigate the concerns around the pedestrian and the vehicle movements at that location. So that's why the ARA response was amended in that respect. Thank you.
Thanks, Barry. So I think we've heard from planning officers and Ayrshire Roads Alliance. So at this point, I'm going to hand over to members for any questions, discussion, then there's a motion decision. Councillor McGee.
Just to ask Barry, there've been a number of changes over the years in front of the Old Man's Cabin. There used to be a big kind of garden there, which was totally removed, and we've put disabled bays in there and a couple of other parking spaces. So that was done by East Ayrshire Council, was it no? And we didn't have any concerns about pedestrian safety when we've done that.
Councillor McGee, I don't know the history to the various changes that have been made at that location over the years, so I can't really comment on that. Sorry.
Councillor Maitland.
Do we know if there's ever been any history for a request for a community asset transfer? Thank you.
Don't know. Oh,
I'm not aware of anything. I'm afraid. So not aware of anything. Sorry.
Councillor McGee just pointed out it wasn't a council building, so there would be none for a community asset transfer. So thanks, John.
Councillor Maven, would you want to come in?
Yes, please, Chair. Thank you. I think there's a bit of a problem here. It looks like this building is actually dead. It's not in use. We're not allowed to demolish it, or there's objections to demolishing it. It might fall down on its own over the next years if nothing's done by someone to take it on and do something with it. Floor's collapsed and no one's going to have the money to repair that and take it on. I'm concerned about the amount of parking. I don't know if the pavement parking regulations that are brand new with the Scottish Government are going to affect this. You look on Google Maps, there's about 6 cars parked right in front of this building. There's a drop curb on the main street. There's another drop curb on, is it Mill Hill Road up the side? There's a wee road goes up the side of the Premier store and there's a car park at the back there with space for another 6 cars. You can clearly see it in Google Maps, unless Google Maps is out of date and then this is wrong now. And at Finnick Road, there's another car park with space for 20 odd cars. So I'm in a quandary about this. Do we really need more car parking spaces? Are we going to do something about the parking in front of this wee building with regard to pavement parking regulations? And if the council's recommending, the planning officers are recommending, no, we should not demolish this building, what are we going to do to try and make sure it's safeguarded and doesn't fall down in future, since it's in such a sorry state. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Maben. Fiona, does anybody want to respond to that?
I think at the moment, what we can say is that the application as in front of us isn't in accordance with the development plan. It hasn't been proven to us that the building is structurally unsound. And the current scheme in conservation terms doesn't merit our support. That's not to say they can't go away and try and come up with a different scheme together to look at what they could do. The building certainly at the moment, all we can do is assess what's in front of us at the moment. And there's not really much else I can add to that. It's quite clear in your report, Councillor, that the proposal doesn't comply with the local development plan in conservation terms, and the applicant's agent hasn't put in a conservation statement to otherwise or come up with a scheme that otherwise does. So at the present time, we have to determine what's in front of us. That would be my position.
You want to come back in?
On the pavement parking regulations, will this affect what's happening in front of the building just now with bollards and drop curbs and cars all over the place?
Yeah, just looking at the current situation, there would need to be some kind of clear delineation made between the extent of the pavement and as to whether we're retaining some element of parking in front of the existing building. When you see the car parked at the junction there, that's clearly parked on what would be deemed as part of the pavement. So that kind of area there will need to be tidied up if it's to be retained.
Thank you, Chair. As I understand, your planning officers are quite right. We've got to deal with what's in front of us, and I'll be happy to follow the recommendations at this time. My worry is we're just going to end up kicking this down the road, and it's going to come back in front of this committee in a different way in the future at some point. Thank you, Chair.
That's Councillor Maben. Councillor Lennox.
Thanks, Chair. I do acknowledge what officers are telling us in terms of what's in front of us, but I share the same concerns as probably some of the other members of the committee in terms of I can just see in 5 or 10 years' time this building getting into a state where it's an issue in itself, and the community will be looking to get it demolished and get rid of it because it's an eyesore. That's my real concern, that as Councillor Maben said, we're just kicking this down the road. I'll be honest, I'm not that familiar with that particular location, but if maybe some of the members that are familiar with could maybe just here's their opinion on that as well, please. Chair, thank you.
It's Councillor Lennox. So I'm going to bring in Councillor Cowan.
Thank you, Chair. I realise this is out of step of the normal order, but I'm wondering whether we should actually have a site visit based on some of the concerns that we've heard this morning to specifically look at the pedestrian access, the road safety, and also perhaps that would give some more time for some information about a possible conservation statement, just on the quandary that members have expressed this morning. Would that be a possibility? If, of course, members are in agreement for a site visit.
We'll continue our discussion at this point, and I know Craig was keen to come in, and then I was going to bring in Councillor McGee.
Thank you, Chair. It was just to kind of, I think, go back, to what Fiona had said, and members will see it set out within the body of the report. And I am conscious we do have to deal with the application before us. Clearly, I think, as Fiona has said, when you're looking at some of these conservation issues like demolition, etc., which forms part of the papers before you, you'll see the paper does make it clear that there isn't any evidence that's been placed before the planning authority to suggest it's structurally unsound. And I think that
nor that the reuse of the building would be difficult. And I think that's one of the difficulties here, members. And I think that's why I think Fiona is saying the recommendation is the best, advice that we can, given the information that's been presented to us, which is now subsequently presented to you, which is, that given where we are with this particular application, the recommendation is before you. Clearly, it would be up to the applicant, depending where members get to today, to consider what is said. And, depending on that outcome, there are potentially options without, predetermining anything. There are potential options for the applicant, which would also include setting out in some kind of report what the actual state of that building is and whether or not it can be put back into use in any shape or form, which may also further inform matters for the planning service, which is what Fiona had mentioned earlier. But the difficulty is the application before us is the application before us that needs to be considered. Going back to what Councillor Cowan had perhaps just mentioned there, as we know, it is an option for the planning committee should they feel that they wish to go on a site visit. It's an informal part of the process. And obviously for members, we do normally have scheduled site visits in advance of them, should there be any particular issues, so that members get an opportunity to familiarise themselves. I am also conscious that some photographs have been presented as part of the presentation, which may give some context to the application that may be something that would negate any site visit. But obviously, should members feel that actually they would want that, notwithstanding that, then it is obviously an option for them. Although hopefully for members, clearly we've had some photographs and there are local members here as well who are also aware of the site. But it is a matter ultimately for the committee. If you feel, notwithstanding that, you would want a site visit.
Thanks, Craig. Councillor McGee.
I'm happy to come to a determination today. For a site visit, we should have had it before the day. However, I see some folk talking about Google Maps. When you see a car that is sitting in that pavement there used to be a kind of unsightly raised garden at that point. That was removed, and there was disabled parking put in there and parking spaces. That's why they cars are up there. Some of them don't go into the parking space, they just park on the pavement, but they were supposed to do that. That was what it was designed for. I've used that building lots and lots of times in my 20 years as a councillor. That's where we used to hold our surgeries. It was a real used building. They'd all been refurbished, new carpets, etc., etc. But my understanding is that the committee just couldn't keep it going, and it was then it was sold. I've got a lot of sympathy for the applicant, because I think he's done a lot to refurbish that shop, which will only be for the benefit of the community. And there is a problem with parking, because the parking area at the Finnick Road is always full. So there is a real issue with parking. However, I think my concern is we keep talking about the conservation area as if it's some grand schema thing. We've had the public hall was disused for years, where trees growing out it. That was when it was under the ownership of East Ayrshire. We've had a derelict cafe there for over 40 years. That's in the conservation area. It doesn't do only good for Comores, you know what I mean? But that building has a place in a lot of folks' hearts. But I've got concerns, as other councillors have expressed. What happens if it just then becomes a derelict building? However, as has been clearly presented with the planning officers, the applicant hasn't, as far as I can see, done enough under the conservation area issue. And that's where we fall down. So if I was moving to determination, I'd be happy to go with the recommendations. Thank you.
That's Councillor McGee. Councillor Kyle.
Thanks very much, Chair. I'll go back to the question you asked yourself when you were talking about the dampness. I think there's an inspection needing done with a damp course company, which is very expensive because 9 times out of 10 have to take it back to the foundations. Now, if you're going to repair that, that's very, very expensive because it depends the length of the dampness is coming from and where the dampness is coming from. Because you've got to get that sorted out. You can't keep that going because it'll just rise again and the wooden floors will just get damp again and rot. It's got to be repaired. And as I say, taken right down to the foundations. Thank you.
Thanks. Skeptical, you want to come in?
It was just to say, oh, excuse me. I think obviously respecting it as members' decision. I think the position that we have recommended to you that from conservation perspectives, there hasn't been evidence given to us. And I think Councillor McGee, you've obviously spoken about that yourself. I think for me, I would hold the recommendation of refusal at this point in time. There is purpose for the applicant who can come back and give us more information, give us a justification. To give us a conservation justification and a marketing exercise is a considerable piece of work. And to my mind, that would come back in as part of an amended proposal, should they wish to do so. It is up to them. They do have a right of appeal if it was refused today. But from my perspective, the case in front of us doesn't have the conservation justification for us. And also, we don't have a sort of understanding of the possibilities of reuse for the building and different uses. So from a conservation perspective, the test hasn't been met. And that would be my position to you today as a recommendation. And I think that's conveyed throughout the report.
Thanks, Fiona. I've got Councillor Hogg, then I'll take Councillor Maitland.
Thanks, Chair. I would just like to move that we recommend that we refuse this and the reasons listed, and I'd like to put that forward, that we move to determination, and I would support that we refuse this application based on what the council have put forward, our planning colleagues. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hogg. So I've got Councillor Maitland and then Councillor Crawford.
Thank you, Chair. I have sympathy for my colleagues in regards to site visit, but as said, we're making the decision on what is in front of us today, and I would go with refusal. Thank you.
So you were just going to say this?
I was just going to move that.
So I don't see anybody else online, or is there anybody else that's any comments, questions? So we've had a few members intimating that we move refuse. We've obviously got 2 applications in front of us. We've got 25/0033/CA and 25/0034/PP. When you're moving that, are you moving both of them?
Chair, I would be moving for both.
Councillor Hogg?
Yep, I agree. I would move for both, Chair. Thank you.
Is there any other member otherwise minded? It's a unanimous decision. Okay, can you record that decision, please?
Yeah, sorry, Chair, can I just clarify before we move to confirm the decision? Councillor Cowan, you did earlier mention that you wished a site visit and sort of moved for a site visit in terms of that. Are you willing to drop that motion, or would you have a seconder to carry that forward?
I'm happy to drop the motion. It was just really a suggestion based on, and I probably was looking for what my colleagues were saying, the longer term viability of the area and the pedestrian safety and everything. But I've listened to legal advice and I've listened to the planners, and based on what's in front of us, that needs to be the decision for today.
Thank you.
Thanks for that reminder, Lynn. Appreciate it. Thanks. So have you recorded the decision?
Yeah. So for the purposes of the minute, both these applications have been refused for the reasons listed in the report.
Thanks, Aileen. Okay, members, I'm going to move on to item 4 on the agenda, and that is planning application number 24/0454/PPP. And it's demolition of existing storage accommodation, erection of new dwelling house at Shaw Hill Farmhouse, Shaw Hill, Galston Road, Hurlford. That's Kilmarnock by Mr Thomas Dodds. And again, members, we do have a hearing for this, and I'm going to propose again 5 minutes for each objector and 15 minutes for the agent, if we're quite happy with that. Okay. Thank you very much. So we'll move into the first part of this procedure, and I'm going to hand over to, again, Fiona.
Apologies, just give me 1 second until I get this presentation displayed for you. Apologies, members, I'm having problems with Teams at the moment. Does now. Okay, thank you, Chair. Apologies for that. Planning permission is sought for the demolition of storage accommodation and erection of a new dwelling house at Shaw Hill Farm in principle outside Hurlford with access from a private road off the A71. Details of the site and proposed development are outlined starting at paragraph 3 in your papers, and we have also added in details and a map showing the separation distance to nearby properties. I'll just run through the slides with you now, members, so just please bear with me. Here we have the location of the proposed development to the north of Shaw Hill, and you can see the relationship with Hurlford and Crooked Home on the map in front of you. This plan has been presented to us by the applicant and shows the red line site detailed here. This is the red line site, and you can see the land in blue, which is otherwise owned by the applicant. Again, members, the plan in green shows the plan with the sort of outlined in red and coloured green shows the proposed dwelling house, and the area in a kind of brown colour and also shaded outlined in blue shows the other land owned by the applicant. This is another plan that's given to us now. It is notional design, members, because obviously this is an application in principle. So this is just really for your information at the present time. Some photographs, members, showing the existing properties. The brick building is obviously the application site. Details of the lands around and the access. And that shows that there. A summary of the consultation responses are outlined in your report from paragraphs 14 to 16, and we have no objections to the consultation process. We have a summary of the letters of representation, which are 17 letters, an objection starting at paragraph 17, and these are divided into material and non-planning matters, and we have no letters of support. Planning Scotland Act requires that planning decisions be made in accordance with the development plan, unless material considerations indicate otherwise. The development plan, as you know, members, comprises LDP2 and MPF4. The primary issues in assessment of this application are noted within paragraph 26 and include issues such as the principle of development, flood risk, residential amenity, design and placemaking, rural landscape, biodiversity and trees, listed building matters, climate, transport, waste management and other matters. As this is an application in principle, it is noted that it has not been demonstrated by the applicant there is a justification or locational need for the development of a house at this location. The proposal critically does not meet with the relevant principal policies of the development plan in relation to the principle for rural housing. In particular, the principle of residential development is contrary to RH1 of LDP2 and Policy 17 of MPF4, as the citing of proposed development has not been justified against the criteria contained within these policies. The principle of the development is not supported by the development plan, and as I've said to you, this is a principal application. Principle is critical. The development does comply with a range of relevant policies or can be made to comply at a detailed application stage, but that does not negate the fact that there are significant failings with the acceptability of the principle of the new dwelling house. This includes matters such as access, design, residential amenity and biodiversity, amongst other matters. There is some tension with the concept of local living in 20-minute neighbourhoods. However, these policies recognise that it may not always be appropriate or achievable to all developments. The rural location of this property is very relevant and will likely require frequent use of a car, but noting that access to amenities and public transport by means other than a car is reasonably feasible, this would not be a determinative matter. Although it may be possible to overcome the conflict of the right-of-way through other processes that would, for example, allow the right-of-way to be diverted, at this time there is no evidence that this could be feasibly achieved. This is a material matter as the development currently proposed would be in direct conflict with the location of the right-of-way, contrary to policy T4 of the local development plan. In conclusion, the development is contrary to a number of fundamental policies of the development plan, and whilst compliance with other detailed policies is or can be achieved, the development is contrary to the principles of the development plan, and there are no material considerations that indicate that the application should be approved, and the application is therefore recommended for refusal, subject to the reasons within your report. And back to yourself, Chair.
Thank you very much, Fiona. So members, move on to part 2 of the hearing procedure. We will hear from the objector or their agents who will present their objections to the committee in support of the written objections. So could I ask Mr. Stephen Brown? Mr. Brown, just the same as the last procedure, it's 5 minutes, with a gentle reminder at 4.
Good morning, Chair and Committee. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to address you this morning. You know the case before you. I was delighted that your own planning officer, Pamela Clifford, has suggested that this should not go forward. We have 17 people objected to it, and clearly the application is also misleading. The applicant does not have Shaw Hill farmhouse. It's not Shaw Hill Farm. It's something that the council gave permission to some years ago to separate the farmhouse from some outbuildings. The application, in my view, in my opinion, is actually he's trying to create 2 new houses by leaving the bothy, which is attached to the existing farmhouse which they previously owned, and creating a brand new dwelling house. Furthermore, and not necessarily within the information that you already have, but recently I was reminded, and I shouldn't be as a custodian of a Georgian home in Shaw Hill, but the actual first 150 yards from the main A71 to the end of the tree line on the road is actually a private road. So it's totally separate. The old, probably 70, 100 years ago, the old entrance to this house came through Milligan's yard. The entrance now comes through gated pillars where a lodge house sits, and the owner of the lodge house has been there some 40 odd years. He also points out that not only the 150 yards of the private road, he reminds me that the rest of the road, whilst owned by the house, actually runs as a right-of-way through the middle of the proposed development onto what would have been stones that you, once upon a time, could cross the Irvine River. That hasn't been pointed out really with the applicant. And he is, in fact, I think over the last few years, moved that significantly to the right of his own property and created a new right-of-way, which is not even kept. So that's another reason I would hope that the council and the committee here would reject this application. Finally, the issues we have with lots of other events that happen down in this particular dwelling place next door to what was Shaw Hill Farmhouse. There are other things that happen, such as we have a camper van that has been parked there for some time. We're getting mail delivered to the camper van, and that person's not actually a resident. Within the deeds of those properties, you're not allowed to have a caravan, you're not allowed to have a car park. You can't have anybody parking there overnight collecting their mail. We've had attempts to, or suggestions that they're going to move the pillars which we own at the beginning of the 71 entrance to the private road, move that to bring in some kind of mobile home. Again, that's contrary to any of the existing regulations attached to those homes. There's one last thing. The road has a huge amount of impact on all of the people who are walking their dogs, etc., etc. Any additional traffic and any other properties going to be built down there would require a new water supply, probably also some septic tanks. None of that is actually being addressed in the application. And I would hope that the committee and the chair this morning would agree with us and collectively with Pamela Clifford's department to reject this application. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. At this point, I'm going to open up to members if we get any questions for you. No, there's no one online, so thank you very much. I think I've got a Mrs. Hay. So it's going to be the next objector to speak.
Good morning, Chair and committee, and thank you for allowing us the time to talk to you today and just to consolidate what Mr. Brown's already said. And for all of us, I think that live as part of the Shaw Hill community, I think it's really important that we have water. And Stephen's already mentioned that water. I think Stephen himself actually had to put a new water supply in many years ago, and I think he did as much as he possibly could. I think Scottish Water allowed them to put in a maximum amount of, and that's what we have. And that water is under considerable strain right now. I think there's 5 houses just now, 3 of us at the top of the hill, and 2 at the bottom. And the way pressure works, the water runs to the bottom. So as soon as there's taps on at the bottom of the hill, the people at the top of the hill struggle with water. So I think for us at the top of the hill, that's the main objection. Really, is that water is under considerable strain. I think the other thing that the road is also a concern. Again, the Part Browns, Orla and Stephen, have taken on a huge task of looking after that old property. It's a magnificent property. It's of huge value to Hurlford, I would say, and it's not everybody that would want to take on a building and be the custodian of a building like that. And I certainly wouldn't, and I think I'm speaking for the other residents, our neighbours as well, that it's really important that people are good enough to take on these roles, and the road would be hugely expensive to keep repairing. Or I know it is hugely expensive to keep repairing, and the more traffic that we have on that road, naturally the more maintenance that's required, and an additional house adds to that as well. And again, when the Park Browns took on that property, we didn't operate the way we do nowadays. The fact that everybody has so much home delivery, whether it's Amazon, whether it's just everything that we order now online, that tracks traffic is I'm sure much more just much busier than it previously was. So for myself, and again, I know that the other residents have said to me, Kay, if you are speaking, please do tell them that that they have the same concerns. And like I say, water's important to all of us. So without water, nobody's going to be living very well at all. So for me, that's really that is our main concern. As for another property at the bottom of the hill, I feel as if it would be squeezed in, but I know I'm not an expert on planning, and will obviously leave that to you. But I do feel as if the site down there is certainly from our home. We look down. You saw in the pictures earlier. It's a beautiful old building, and I think it's a you know, again a credit to Hurlford, and it's a nice beautiful building to have. And I don't think you know, another building squeezed in beside it would add to that. So I don't really have anything else really to say. It's that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As you say, so members, open up for question. Councillor Sangster.
Hi, just regards the road going up, what kind of state's it in at the moment? Is it fit for purpose at the moment, and does it have any passing places?
No passing places. No, there aren't really any passing places. There's a gate into Farmers Field, so at that point, yes, you can, but that's right at the very start of the driveway up. The driveway's about 3/4 of a mile long, and so yes, it's a challenge. The other day there, I was going up and we actually happened to have 5 cars on the track at the same time, which is really tricky. So reversing is if you're going to live or be a delivery driver going up to where we are, reversing needs to be a skill that you have.
Members, any other questions for Mrs. Hay? No. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time.
Members, are going to move on to part 4 of the hearing procedure, where we hear for the applicant or their agent. Could I call up, is it Mr. Paul Ceci? I think he's the agent. Okay. Thanks. Would you just like to come up to the lectern then, thanks. Ask just before you start your
Sorry,
5 minutes. Could I just catch your name again? Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
It's Mike Evans, Michael Evans.
Okay, thank you very much.
I get more than 5 minutes, though, don't I? I mean,
sorry, 15, yeah, my apologies.
I mean, I'm not going to run to 15, but I thought I was getting more than 5. Bear with me, folks, till I get myself slightly organised. Well, first of all, good morning, or is it still morning? I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the committee for providing this opportunity for a hearing in relation to this application. Now, the application is the work both of myself, Mike Evans as planning consultant, and my colleague Paul Ceci, architect, and who is in fact, as you know, the agent for the application. If I can turn first of all to the reasons for refusal, and in particular reference to National Planning Framework Policy 17, Rural Homes. Part A of that policy lists 8 specific reasons, circumstances where development proposals for new homes in rural areas would be supported. Now, we would agree with the Planning Service that the application would fail in relation to 7 of them. However, we would disagree, in our opinion, that the proposals entirely do not satisfy any of the criteria of NPF Policy 17. And I refer specifically to Criterion 2, which says in that the bulk of the site is vacant and unsightly. And NPF 4 glossary confirms that brownfield can include vacant previously development land. So our argument is, and this is what our starting point was, that the proposals do comply with that particular criteria of NPF Policy 17. As a result of, in our opinion, of course, being able to confirm the principle of development at this location based on Policy 17, we then, in our supporting statements, went on to show how the proposals would comply with a wide range of policy requirements. Now, first of all, at the strategic level, there would be no impact on the setting of Kilmarnock nor Halford, nor possibly Crooked Home. It would not contribute to coalition between settlements. In our opinion, it would not lead to suburbanisation within the countryside, although there's no definition of suburbanisation
in the local development plan. In our opinion, the landscape capacity, which is a function of the natural features of the landscape, topography, landforms and vegetation, our conclusion being that the site has the capacity in these terms to accommodate the proposals. The proposals do not occupy a hilltop and skylining is not an issue. The proposals would not visually dominate the setting. In terms of boundary treatment, account would be taken of existing natural growth, which would be strengthened with additional planting. There would be no underbuilding. The characteristics of the existing settlement pattern have been taken into account. The proposals do not visually dominate any adjacent properties and would respect the scale and form of adjacent properties. Granted, this is only an indicative layout that we've provided at this stage, but we were conscious of the relationship with the existing buildings and have provided some detail to demonstrate that compatibility would be achievable. We would, in due course, design the building to complement neighbouring properties. The group itself doesn't have a standardised look, but nevertheless, the details of neighbouring properties would be taken into account. As a development of an existing group of rural housing, the proposals we concluded would relate well. Setting a building against the backdrop of trees is one of the most successful means by which new developments can be integrated into the landscape. The photographic material which forms part of the application within the supporting statement, in our opinion, confirms that this is achieved. Excessive lighting would be avoided, and the unique character of the location we are saying is capable of being addressed by details. Now, a 1.5-storey dwelling is proposed, reflecting the fact that this is the most typical feature of housing in the East Ayrshire countryside. While long and narrow might be typical also of older rural buildings in East Ayrshire, this is not universally the case. The two existing houses, although not long and narrow, nevertheless are an expression of traditional farmers' architecture, and the proposals as a result would take their lead from this. The roof would be at 40 degrees to match the adjoining property, and external finishes, it would be intended, would comprise a slate roof finish, profile zinc ridges, stone walls, multi-pane, double glazed sash and casement windows. We would emphasise the use of sustainable materials. Bear with me. Moving on to the second part of my presentation. As the Planning Officer's report confirms, the proposals were assessed against the requirements of, let me get this right, '18 policies of LDP2 plus the countryside supplementary guidance, and were found, I think the planning officer has already made this point, and were found either to have been compatible with or could be effectively responded to via AMCPPPs in 13 out of the 15 cases, as well as supplementary guidance. Now, in relation to NPP4, 9 policies were used to assess the application. We've concluded that the proposals are either complying with policy or could be effectively responded to via AMCPPs in relation to 8 of these. The two exceptions in the case of the LDP2 and the 1 exception in the case of NPF4 were in fact the reasons for refusal. Just bear with me. Right, if I can turn to reason for refusal 2. On my first visit to the site, a walk through the site, and well, I didn't have a great deal of information about the site, I have to be honest, during that first visit. And I walked through the site, went down to the river and saw the stepping stones that were located in the river. Thought, well, that's unusual, that's very interesting. And then discovered that there was a right-of-way through the site, although physically on the ground you wouldn't know that because there's not an actual strip of land that's visibly identifiable as the right of way, but the right of way is the right of way. It's fact of life, it's there. And what we would say is that, and agreed, this wasn't an issue that we responded to in the planning application. That is, consider how we might reorientate the right of way. In fact, create a proper right of way, which doesn't actually exist there at the moment. We didn't address that issue, but I'm quite confident that that was something that we could take account of. Maybe somebody in the room might be able to answer this, but when we went down to the river and looked at the stepping stones, there was what looked to be a livery on the other side of the stream. Now, I was wondering where any footpath, and I didn't know there was a footpath at that point in time, might go to beyond the stepping stones. That might be a question, somebody in the room might be able to answer. However, the point is that's not an insurmountable problem in terms of the application. Now, from the very beginning of the project, we were very well aware of the policy context within which we were operating. Well, we would have to be. If it was important, therefore, to bring forward proposals that would not undermine the sustainability and robustness of the relevant policies, both locally and throughout East Ayrshire. And in our opinion, the circumstances of the details here mean that, as set out in our supporting statement, we've managed to achieve this. Now, a couple of comments made by the objectors about water supply. I'm not aware of any objection from Scottish Water to the proposals. A number of comments have been made about the condition of the road, even the ownership of the road, linking the proposed site to the A71. At the end of the day, your advisors, the Ayrshire Roads Alliance, did not object to the proposal, so I can only take that on the basis of their considered assessment of all of the transport requirements that they didn't see a problem. On that note, I'll draw to a close and thank you for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Mr. Evans. So I'm going to hand it over to members, see if we've got any questions. No one online. Thank you very much, Mr. Evans.
Okay, thank you.
We just return to the public gallery. Gallery. I'll close the hearing at this point and hand back over to Fiona.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points to come back on. Mr. Park Brown made some comments regarding caravans, etc. And the deeds, that would be a private legal matter. If there was a mobile home brought onto the site, then there would be a requirement for planning permission, and we would need to investigate that as a separate matter. I'll not comment on Rosa. I know obviously Barry's here today. We don't have an objection from Mrs. Hay raised water, as did Mr. Park Brown. We don't have an objection from Scottish Water. That would be a detailed matter if planning permission principle was granted for us to review, and obviously for the applicant to take forward as well. Let me just feel it. In terms of Mr. Evans, I'd refer members really just to the planning committee report in front of you, and particularly paragraphs 28 and 29, which are quite clear that we don't believe the application does comply in principle with rural housing. MPF4 and LDP2 together comprise the development plan. If there's any conflict between the two, LDP2 takes precedence because it's a more recent document. However, I think it's quite clear in the report that we feel it doesn't meet the criteria in principle for rural housing. It doesn't meet RH1, and we also have noted in paragraph 29, we feel that it isn't appropriate and doesn't meet policy 17 in the MPF4. A lot of the points Mr. Evans made were detailed matters, but that does not negate the requirement that in principle the application does not comply with the development plan. I think on that point I'll rest at the moment and happy to come back in as needed.
Thanks, Fiona. Barry, will you want to make any comment for an ARA perspective?
Chair, no, I don't think we've any real additional comments to add to what's already been said and what's in the paper itself. Thank you.
Thanks, Barry. So members, it's over to yourself for any discussion, comments, questions. Councillor Crawford.
Chair, two or three times it was mentioned about right of way. Is there a right of way there? Does
Yes.
the council know if there a right of way?
Yes, there is. And there are no details that have been provided as to how they would move around that requirement. There is also a separate application process to divert a right of way. But equally, in terms of this current application, there is a right of way. It is identified in the council's mapping system. And there is no information as to how the applicant would deal with that.
Councillor Maitland.
Thank you. The applicant mentioned that he felt that I know this is in principle, that he met some of the criteria. I just wanted clarification that he didn't meet any of the criteria and the reasons for the refusal in terms of policy RH1 and typical policy.
Our position is that he
17.
doesn't. It's paragraph 29 of your committee report in front of you. I think you've got to look at the development plan and comprising the two documents as a whole. And if you look at the policies and the direction of the development plan, the in principle acceptability of rural housing, it doesn't meet the criteria in our opinion.
Thanks for the clarification.
Any further question, members? There's no one online. So have we at a point where we can go to determination? Yeah. Do we have any proposals at this point? Councillor Maitland.
I propose we go with the refusal from the officers. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll second that. Yeah.
Okay, so we've got proposing second for refusal. Yeah, as you can see that on as per page 17 in your papers. So is there anybody else otherwise minded? Nope, I think it's unanimous. We just record that.
So for the purposes of the minute, the application has been refused for the reasons listed within the report.
Thank you very much, Aileen. Members, I'm conscious we've still got another 3 items in the agenda. At this point, would you want to take the next one and have a comfort break, or do it just now? Okay, there's an overwhelming requirement for a break just now. So, Robert, could we please pause the recording? Yep. Robert, we're just taking a wee break. Is there any chance we could pause the recording?